Well, thank you for coming today. Appreciate your being here. I'm Elder Gubler. Sister Gubler and I are serving as senior missionaries in the area offices in Auckland. We've been here about 5 months. I work as an attorney for the church in the Office of General Counsel, and Sister Gubler works in public affairs. We've had a great experience so far. We're looking forward to many more months of being here. We're from California originally. I worked in my own law firm for 37 years. We're from a town called Visalia, and it's about the size of Hamilton here. All of our kids were born and raised there. It was a great experience. It's Central California, the farming area of the state. And we were there so long, I ended up becoming the mayor of Visalia. And so I finished up my political career along with my legal career last December, put our papers in, and here we are. I've also presented at BYU Provo, and it's been a few years since I've done that, and it's fun to get back into the saddle again, so I appreciate the opportunity of doing this. Today I'm going to be talking about the blessings of a good education and meaningful employment. What is the target audience? Well, it's everyone, the youth, adults, and seniors. We never stop learning, do we? But I'd like to start today with talking about the youth. Have you ever wondered about our younger generation? I think sometimes they miss out on a lot of things. They spend a lot of time on computers, on their smartphones, tablets, and everything else, and they're just not getting out having all the experiences that I remember us having when we were their age. Okay, get this to change on me here. Sometimes this freezes up. Let's see. Okay.
It just didn't want to make a little noise. But...
Oh, let's see. Here we go. Your battery is running low. Okay. Let's do this. I hope this hangs on here because it's plugged in. Okay. Rick, do you mind checking on that? Anyway, I've got one or two cartoons I'll share with you throughout this particular presentation. And maybe check on the back side there. And see if they did something to disconnect that power. Anyway, here's a cartoon. I think there's a lot of truth sometimes in cartoons. This is a father talking to his son, the son's on his computer. He says, the dad says, "You want to check out this new game? You try to acquire riches and battle evil forces as you advance through a strange and mysterious world." And the son says, "Sounds awesome, Dad." What happens? The dad kicks him out the front door. So that's where we're going to find that battle with riches and evil forces in that strange and mysterious world. We shouldn't be afraid to have our children get out and have a few experiences. Here's another cartoon. This is Hagar the Horrible. I don't know if you have that cartoon here, but it's about a Viking warrior and his family. And so Hagar's having a conversation with his son Hamlet, and the son says, "Dad, I have a very important question. Would you mind to check and make sure that that's charging because my computer said it wasn't charging?" So the son says, "Dad, I have a very important question." "Of course, Hamlet. Why don't we sit here and I'll try to answer your question." The son says, "Dad, will I be a success in life?" And Dad says, "Of course you will, my son. And you will be a big success. I promise you'll be very wealthy. And I promise you'll live in a really big house. And I promise that you will own a horse and a cow and a big expensive boat. And I promise that you'll be able to buy anything you want." And then the son says, "Will I be happy?" And the father says, "That I can't promise." Okay, it's really up to our children. As much as we want to do for our children, it's really up to them to become happy, to get that education and that meaningful career that we all want them to have. Let's see, one more if you don't mind here. And this is called zits. And my last class, I didn't know what zits were. Zits is slang for pimples. And so this is a cartoon about a teenager, this teenage boy called Jeremy. So the dad comes in probably on a Saturday morning. The son's been out on a date the night before. And Dad says, "Jeremy, do I get any change back from the $20 or dollars I gave you last night?" The son says, "Oh yeah, about that. The movie was $8, and Sarah was starving, so I got the jumbo popcorn. That was like $6, and Hector borrowed a $5. And the movie we walked by after the movie we walked by the food court where the most incredible pizza was just coming out of the oven. Then we all went over to the bookstore for, we'll say, hot chocolate here for this crowd. So the dad says, so I owe you. And the son says, give me another 20, we'll call it even. Okay? So isn't that like a lot of parents today, though? Like I said, there's a lot of truth and humor. So today I've got 3 key points that I want to share with you. First off, the importance of developing a work ethic. Secondly, education is the key to success in life. And number 3, pursue excellence in your chosen career. To succeed in the long haul of life and getting a good education and pursuing a chosen career, we need to know how to work and work hard. We can do hard things. So let's talk about this work ethic development first. I want to share with you a study that Harvard did. It started in 1938. They followed the lives of 456 inner city youth from the town of Boston, Massachusetts. So 456 youth, and they followed them every 2 years. And these were boys, by the way, I should say. Back then, they usually tested the boys. Now Harvard has a girls' study, which they're doing the same thing on. But they started in 1938. If you count towards the present day, we're about 80 years into this study, and it's still going. They're still interviewing those that are still alive. And at different phases of their lives, they tested these boys to see what their progress was. So I don't want to go into what they're doing now. I want to go back to the late 70s, early 80s, when these young people from the Boston area had become middle-aged people like a lot of us here. I'm supposed to laugh that part, right? I used to be middle-aged. I think I'm past that point. But let's find out what Harvard found in this 40-year study these young boys were doing, or how they were doing in the 70s and 80s when they were in middle age. So those highest on the boyhood activity scale, in other words, those boys that had grown to become middle-aged and who as youth had been given chores and jobs, how did they turn out in middle age? They were 2 times as likely to have warm relations, 5 times as likely to be well paid, 16 times less likely to be significantly unemployed. Now those who had worked least in boyhood, how were they doing in middle age? Far more likely to have been arrested, 10 times more likely to be mentally ill, 6 times as many had died. So this is interesting now. IQ, amount of schooling, family, social, and economic class really made no real difference in how the boys turned out. So what made the difference, according to this study? Conclusions. When they were compared at middle age, one fact stood out. Regardless of intelligence, family income, ethnic background, or amount of education, those who had worked as boys, even at simple household chores, enjoyed happier and more productive lives than those who had not. I think that's a very telling statistics. I think sometimes we're afraid of giving chores or jobs to our children. You know, we read in the paper about how the young people have low self-esteem nowadays. Well, I would suggest that may be related to the fact that they're not being challenged enough, that they have too much free time. I'll tell you a quick war story. My wife and I were coming back from a service project, and I'll call his name John. The fellow that was driving our van was complaining about his sons, and he said, you know, my 3 sons, when they come home from school, they go immediately to their room and play video games for the rest of the evening. And on weekends, they do the same thing. And he says, I can't get them out of the house. And then he said, I hope that when they go on their missions will fix them. So I would suggest that's not the best way to do it. I think we need to start earlier so that when they get in the missions, that they're ready to go to work. So I think we're too easy on our young people. Oh, and one more thing. Boys who worked in the home or community gained confidence and came to feel that they were worthwhile members of society. Because they felt good about themselves, others felt good about them. Okay, let me share a little story with you, if I can get the video to work here. Back in 2001, I came home on a Saturday afternoon from the office, and I saw my wife and my children scurrying around the house, putting things away and cleaning up, and I said, this is not normal Saturday afternoon activities here. I mean, then we had chore charts and all that kind of stuff, and the kids worked. But on a Saturday afternoon, I said, what's going on, Elisa? And she said, we got a phone call. CBS is coming to our house. And CBS is one of the 3 major networks in America. I said, that was a scam. They're not coming here. And so I sit down, read my newspaper. 20 minutes later, doorbell rings, and CBS had sent a camera crew and interviewers to our house to spend 3 days with us. They had a story called Everybody Has a Story, a show, and they followed us for 3 days, and they reduced it all to a 3-minute video which they showed on national TV in the morning and in the evening news. And it was a little nerve-wracking because we didn't have a clue what they were going to tell about our family. It could have been anything. It could have been good, it could have been bad. So if I can make this work, let me see if I can't share with you that little 3-minute video. Keep your fingers crossed. I'm going to just go out of the PowerPoint here and see if I can get this to work.
Instead of butter and margarine, or creamy fruit spreads. Brummel and Brown, the only spreads blended with yogurt.
What does this Mormon bishop know about keeping your kids out of money trouble? Plenty. Wake up to what's happening tomorrow morning on The Early Show with Brian Gubler and Jane Clayson. As the country prepares.
In his ongoing journey to prove that everybody has a story, our Steve Hartman has traveled to various spots around the country. But oddly enough, a random toss of that dart and choose to find his subjects had never landed near the West Coast until now.
First thing you notice about Visalia, California is the quiet, which, after meeting this family, Gubler, I can only attribute to good insulation.
It's 7:22.
Can you give me one more plate?
Warren Gubler, the subject of this story, that was him, and his wife Elisa, that was her, have 5 children, ages 14 down to 4.
Put your shirt on, put your shirt on.
The kids can be real nerve testers. And yet this Mormon bishop begins his day without a drop of caffeine.
Learn lots.
He does not smoke, drink, or swear. What's the worst word you've ever heard him use?
Probably rear end.
I'm just an overgrown Boy Scout.
Yeah, he usually comes home whistling. I mean, just like a word cleaver or whatever kind of guy.
If we can do a prayer, then we'll go have milk and cookies.
And yet beneath those boyish dimples lies an alter ego. Why don't you tell people what it is you do for a living?
Well, I'm an attorney. Good morning, Honor. Warren Gubler for the judgment creditor, and the focus of my practice in recent years has been debt collection. Do you have any kind of proposal on how you'd like to satisfy this debt? Do you have an attorney? Where are your bank accounts at? What did you drive?
You would go take that guy's car.
I would. I'm an advocate. Hey, Monica, good morning.
And a busy one at that.
When the economy goes south, what can I do to help you? My business picks up.
Fact is, bankruptcies are at an all-time high in America. And Warren, who incidentally lectures on how to stay out of debt, says the most important thing you can tell a person to make them financially responsible is something along the lines of, work hard, save your money, or it'll be no dessert for you. Something like that.
Part of the deal is you wash the table, too.
Boy,
That was an
that's
oversimplification,
He says good
by the way.
money managers are made young. Really young.
I'm photogenic.
4-year-old Laura is already developing a work ethic. Dishes are stored low just for her.
Good job.
Warren says chores are the all-important first step to creating money-smart kids. And although he doesn't pay allowance, he has come up with an interesting twist.
You can't teach the importance of money if they don't have a way to earn that money.
So in this house, every kid gets at least one paying job.
$4.
He's had Eddie mowing since he was 6. He's got another collecting cans at the office, and his latest brainchild.
Over in this area of Visalia, we're the only people that have cows.
A cow, actually.
That's right.
For the experience.
So far, the kids haven't exactly been appreciative.
But they're going to be children that know the value of a dollar.
Perhaps someday. But it's hard to get kids to look beyond tomorrow.
And glad to get on TV.
Or for that matter,
Lord Jesus Christ, amen.
beyond dessert.
Pass the jelly.
Deep snow. Deep snow. Trip, South Dakota.
Until then, I'm Steve Hartman for The Early Show.
Getting set for us to close down shop, Jane.
Okay. Some of the Gubler folly here. Okay, so I always thought it would be fun if everybody had a story, that program came back and interviewed our family 20 years later, right? To see how we turned out. Well, the show only lasted 1 or 2 more years after that. But if you're interested, let me tell you how my kids turned out. The oldest one is a school psychologist, just a sweetheart. She was the one that was cooking in the kitchen. The next one was the little girl that was feeding the calf milk. She's a mom, has 3.5 kids, our grandkids. Wonderful mom, loves being a mom. And this is her with her oldest daughter, who just starred in Sound of Music. She was one of the Von Trapp family children. And anyway, we're real proud of their family. Then we have Eddie, the little boy that was pushing the lawnmower. And he's a 4th-year dental student. In fact, he'll be here tomorrow. He's on his way to, is it Samoa? Yeah, it's to Samoa. He's talking about Samoa. He's going to be working for free a week there, doing a dental clinic there. And then he'll be here tomorrow night, be to Samoa, and then come back and spend a few days with us and see what we do as senior missionaries. Just a great young man. Then there's Kimmy. Kimmy loves to sing. She has sung all over, at least America. I'm not sure if she's made it in other places in the world yet. But she studied music and taught high school choir until recently, when she moved back to Utah and is now teaching kind of a middle school age range for choir kids. And then the baby, the little girl that said I'm photogenic and it says pass the jam, she turned out to be the real athlete in the family and played rugby, was the captain of a BYU girls rugby team, and they won the national championship in May of this year. And she just finished up her degree and is teaching for her first year at a brand new high school in Harriman, Utah, teaching Spanish, which she learned on her mission, and also is coaching their women's athletic team. So they turned out pretty good despite what we did, but I really believe that just having them do simple chores and having jobs and responsibilities made a big difference in their lives. Okay, Baby Blues, another cartoon. The little girl says to her mom, is there some way I could make some money? And mom says, sure, you could wash the car, or weed the garden, or sweep the driveway, or the daughter says, I was thinking more along the lines of an inheritance. Okay? Don't our kids think like that sometimes? Along the same lines. Back to Zitz. The teenage son, Jeremy, is saying to his parents, there, I found you guys a probate attorney. You know, just in case you haven't set up my trust fund yet. And dad says, we'll get right on that. And the son says, hey, it's expensive out there. And then the next day, continuing on the same thing, the son's talking to his parents, I really don't have a trust fund? No. That seems a little unreasonable, don't you think? Dad says, unreasonable? And the son says, you can't just rely on my wife to support me. And the dad says, what part of the word job is confusing you? So, anyway, Elder Maxwell, he talked about the importance of work in some of his conference addresses. And here's one of the quotes that I like of his. We likewise speak of working out our salvation, of the law of the harvest, and of the sweat of the brow. These are not idle phrases. Instead, they underscore the importance of work. In fact, work is always a spiritual necessity, even if, for some, work is not an economic necessity. So work is always a spiritual necessity. It helps us spiritually as well as temporally, according to Elder Maxwell. We all know the old song, Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel. It's all about work, isn't it? The world has need of willing men who wear the worker's seal. Come help the good work move along. Put your shoulder to the wheel. Put your shoulder to the wheel, push along, do your duty with a heart full of song. We all have work, let no one shirk. Put your shoulder to the wheel. And then a quote by President Hinckley. The major work of the world is not done by geniuses, it is done by ordinary people with balance in their lives who have learned to work in an extraordinary manner. Okay, and if you think about that, I know a number of people that consider themselves to be geniuses, but they always have excuses about why the world hasn't treated them fairly. And I've met a lot of people who don't even claim to be geniuses, just ordinary, nice people who've been very successful in life, who have learned to work in an extraordinary manner. Okay, let's go to our second point. Education is the key to success in life. I think we have a scriptural mandate to gain intelligence, right? Let's look at these verses from the Doctrine and Covenant. The glory of God is intelligence, or in other words, light and truth. And I have commanded you to bring up your children in light and truth. And if a person gains more knowledge and intelligence in this life through his diligence and obedience than another, he will have so much the advantage in the world to come. Seek ye diligently and teach one another words of wisdom. Seek learning, even by study and also by faith. Establish a house of learning. So, in the recent conference, and you're welcome to take pictures if you'd like to, copy any of these videos, feel free to do so. We just had General Conference, and as you know, President Nelson just announced a new temple in Papua New Guinea. Okay, after that, I think probably Rick was there, we had a meeting with the area presidency at the area offices, and the three members of the area presidency talked about what they'd learned at General Conference and some of the seminars which they'd gone to. And they talked specifically about this new temple in PNG. Let me share with you some of the statistics from that. I think it was Elder Natras said that there are over 8 million people in PNG. They had missionary work begin there in 1979. There are currently 2 stakes and 12 districts. He mentioned some of the challenges facing the church in Papua New Guinea. High baptism rate. That's a terrible, terrible challenge to have, isn't it? Of course, we all want high baptism rates, but when you bring in a lot of new people and your members are still relatively young in the church, you've got to get them up and running because they're going to be leading the church before long. Other challenges, many of the converts live in low socioeconomic conditions. They have inexperienced leaders because they're also new in the church. Retention of returned missionaries is an issue for them, and security, education, and employment of members. He said that there is a 66% illiteracy rate in PNG, and I've read that unemployment is up to 80% there. So the point of all this was we have these challenges. What do we do to meet these challenges? And the conclusion was education. Okay, the church just has to get in there and assist these new members in their educations, not only in the church, but temporarily, I suspect, so that they can get out there and be contributing members of the church and of society. And then what does our prophet, President Nelson, think about education? As you know, he's a highly trained heart surgeon. Spent many years in school and, in fact, instructed other surgeons on the art of open heart surgery. He says, in the church, obtaining an education and getting knowledge are a religious responsibility. We educate our minds so that one day we can render service of worth to somebody else. It's a religious responsibility to get an education, get knowledge, so that we can render service of worth to somebody else. So, let's look at the financial benefits of getting a good education. These are some statistics from 2002 in US dollars. What's the lifetime earning potential of someone who never graduates from high school? According to this study, $1 million. High school graduates have the lifetime earning potential of $1.2 million. An associate degree, which is a 2-year college degree after high school, $1.6 million. If you make it all the way through and get a bachelor's degree, $2.1 million. A master's degree, $2.5 million. Doctoral degree, $3.4 million. And a professional degree, $4.4 million. So the more education you get, the more lifetime earning potential you have. I don't know if you've ever thought about that before. And this is still true today. Actually, this study is about 18 years old, so those dollar ranges are probably a lot higher than that today. But there's other benefits to getting a good education besides just the financial part. Let's talk about the top 10 reasons earning a college degree is an awesome idea. First one's going to be financial, again, pay increase. Number 2, you get to choose a desirable field. You get to decide for yourself what you want to study and eventually go into work-wise. Promotions. I will tell you that when I was the mayor, I oversaw the city administration and the police chief, fire chief, and their departments. I saw who got the raises. And the ones that consistently got the raises and the promotions were the ones that had continued their educations. A lot of these firefighters and police officers in particular went back and were studying night classes and going back to school so that they could get degrees in their fields. And I thought it was very interesting. I followed it along, and the ones that were still in school and trying to better themselves seemed to be the ones that were getting the promotions. Self-satisfaction. It feels good to have a college degree. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something. You're setting an example for others. Think about it when your kids learned that their parents thought it was important enough that they stayed in school and got a college degree or got an education. Great example to our young people. You make yourself more desirable to employers when they know that you've got a degree. It helps your critical thinking skills, communication skills, networking opportunities. I still communicate with my classmates after all these decades. And we network, we share job possibilities and information and clientele, frankly. And the final, or 10th point is, you get to personalize your lifestyle. By choosing your education and pursuing that, you can then determine the eventual outcome of your career and your life, can't you? Okay, let me show you a picture, see if any of you recognize it. Anyone ever seen this place before? Okay, you've got the temple there. What's this down here? It's the old Church College of New Zealand, isn't it? I grew up always hearing about all the neat things that happen at the Church College of New Zealand. The Church College here was here from 1958 through 2009, 51 years of success. It shows that the church recognized the importance of a quality education for the local saints. In fact, I've read that they actually started building the church college before they laid the foundation for the temple. So I think that kind of tells you the priority that education is for the church. So that the high school was closed down in 2009. Does that mean the church is no longer interested in education here in New Zealand? No, not at all. It's just that New Zealand is a first world country. They have a first-rate education from what I've been able to tell working with the young single adults in the Takapuna Second Ward. And the church made a decision that New Zealand has an educational structure that provides those needs for the saints and to focus their resources on other matters. And this has been consistent throughout the church's history. If you look at the early days of the church, especially when the saints moved west, the first thing they would do would be to set up an academy or a school for the local saints so they could be educated. To give you an example, I went to Dixie College in St. George. I got to spend an extra 2 years at home and eat mom's cooking and save the room and board by going there before I transferred to the uni, BYU. So the Dixie College was started by the saints, by the St. George, it was called the St. George Academy, started by the stake there. They started it around 1911, and then in the 1930s, the church basically gave the college to the State of University, along with Snow College and one or two other colleges that the church was running. Because by that time, one, it was a financial burden upon the church. It was during the Depression years. And two, because the state government was in a position where they now were able to furnish that education to the local saints. And so the church has done this same pattern throughout. We still have a number of schools throughout the Pacific here. And hopefully, as the governments of those various island nations continue to develop and develop their own educational system, at some point maybe the church will discontinue some of these other schools. That's just my conjecture, but the point is the emphasis on education, which the church has always placed on the members. Okay, President Hinckley said, the process of stretching our minds and utilizing the skills of our hands lifts us from the stagnation of mediocrity. So stretching our minds and utilizing the skills of our hands. That's what the point that I want to emphasize next. I'm not just talking about a university education here. There's different kinds of educations. We're all different. We don't all have to be medical doctors. We don't all have to be lawyers. There's lots of terrific careers that require different paths of education. You have trade schools. You have apprenticeships. And the church has even started Pathway Connect, hasn't it? Along the same lines, to make these educational opportunities available for all saints around the world. Now, Elder Fukafuka, if I said that right, who is of Tongan descent, lives in Australia and is serving in the Takapuna Second Ward, which is how I know him. I was talking to him about this. He was saying when he goes home, he wants to be a carpenter. He told me that blue-collar workers actually earn more in Australia than white-collar workers. Think about that. You know, we're in the information age, aren't we? And there's a lot of emphasis on on the professions and computers and technology, but as they emphasize this, I think there's less emphasis on some of these areas, such as plumbers, electricians, car mechanics, carpenters. And I believe that those people that go into some of those professions are going to be compensated very well in the future as those job needs increase, but everyone has shifted different direction. The fewer people that you have doing those jobs, the more that they can produce a good living for those people that choose those pathways in life. In fact, I took this article from a local newspaper about a World War II veteran who passed away recently at age 103 in the Auckland area. And he did not have an opportunity to get a formal education. And I wanted to make that point here. His friend Martin said that when John Woods did a job, he did an excellent job. His family never went without anything. Wood's family were too poor to send him to high school, so he started an apprenticeship at age 13. But he was highly intelligent. His friend Martin said, if it had the same opportunity I had to go to university, he would have graduated with first-class honors. He was a frugal, faithful, and humble, strong, quiet type. So I thought that was pretty neat, and that emphasizes the point that you do the best with what your resources are. If you don't have all the educational opportunities that everyone else has, get the most education, get the most knowledge you can, and set an example for the next generation. So, how do we do all this? Education for better work. This actually comes from one of the church's Self-Reliance manuals. It's a bridge. You begin your education there, you complete your education. First off, you have to choose a job. Understand the job market, compare and choose. I think too often our young people just show up at college without a clue of what they want to do when they get there. And I think it's good to think about it in advance. And everyone's different, and I understand that. I had one or two children that knew exactly what they wanted to do. Our son Ed knew he wanted to be a dentist from a young age. And I had one or two daughters that took a while and changed majors a few times and spent a little extra time in college. So you should do that first. In fact, what this church's Self-Reliance manual that's entitled How to Start a Business on page 35 suggests is that we study possible careers. It's along the lines of what I did when I was a freshman in high school, age 14. I took a careers class. And I don't even remember why I did, but it was one of my freshman classes. And the final assignment was to research 3 different careers, go and interview people in those careers, and then write a paper as our final term paper. And I did that, and as part of that, one of those 3 careers I studied was the law and being an attorney. And I talked to an attorney. I was so impressed by that at age 14 I decided that's what I wanted to do with life. So when I finally got to that stage where I was entering into the university, I could point in the right direction. It saves a lot of time. So first, choose a career, choose a job that you want to get into. Next, choose your education, compare and choose, pay for your training. Third, succeed in your education, prioritize and manage, study effectively. And then finally, after you've really made the most of your college education, finish your training and start your job. Plan for success, work for success. You've got to have a plan when you go into your studies there. I really want to emphasize that. Now let me conclude the second part regarding a quality education by quoting President McKay. Character is the aim of true education, and science, history, and literature are but means used to accomplish this desired end. Character is not the result of chance, but of continuous right thinking and right acting. So, character is the aim of true education. Point 3, pursue excellence in your chosen career. Have you ever stopped to think whether the Lord wants you to do a particular career? Is it up to the Lord, or is it up to us to decide and pray about it and seek inspiration? This is a wonderful quote by President Hinckley. The Lord has never given a list of careers ranked from the most important to the least important. He said, I do not care what you want to be as long as it is honorable. A car mechanic, a bricklayer, a plumber, an electrician, a doctor, lawyer, a merchant. But whatever you are, take the opportunity to train for it and to make the best of that opportunity. again, I believe that the Lord leaves it up to us as to what career we want to pursue. Especially in a free society like New Zealand, you have the opportunity to decide for yourself, don't you? Now, so you make your career choice, you get started, and then life happens. Things change. It happens all the time. Our daughter Kimmy, the one that was a singer, she was teaching high school down in Arizona, loved her job working with the high school students, and then she went and got married, if you can believe that. And her husband was still studying at BYU Provo, so she had to leave that job she loved, went up to Provo. She told me that she thought she might have to go back to working at Jimmy John's, which is like Subway sandwiches, which is one of the jobs she had in college. But as it turned out, once she got up there, she became in very high demand, had numerous job offers in her teaching profession of teaching choir, and got a wonderful job working at a private school across the street from Timpanogos Temple there in American Fork. Great job, so she can support her and her husband while he finishes up his education. So you have to, if you get the necessary education and do the prerequisites, you'll become very employable regardless of the circumstances. I'm going to tell one other story, and I've got Rick Chatterton here. I told him I was going to tell it. And this was in one of our devotionals at the area offices. It was related to us at a devotional by President Martin. And he said that Brother Chatterton and another employee were assigned by the area temporal affairs office to notify an employee in Fiji in the finance department that the church was consolidating offices and that this employee would be let go. And then the other brother that was with Rick, forgive me if I don't get this right, let me know, Rick. The other brother asked...
There was a sister.
What's that?
There was a sister that was with me.
Oh, it was a sister with you. Thank you very much. But the brother you were talking to, I guess the sister said, how has the Lord prepared you for this? Which is an interesting question as you're letting someone go. And this good brother who was being phased out replied that in 2011, his employer at the church said that he shouldn't assume that the job would be there forever. Things constantly are changing and he should prepare. So he had started a taxi business on the side, and I think he just finally finished his employment just a few weeks ago, and he had saved up the money, and plus with some of his termination pay, he went out and got a second taxi. And so he's right back to work again and doing very well, I suspect. So I thought that was really a neat story to show that if you prepared yourself, if you got an education, then that career aspect will fall into place. You just need to be ready for changes in life. Now this is a quote by Elder Sorensen, one of our former 70s. Once you have chosen your work, love it. No job is perfect. Every job has its challenges and its days of drudgery. Maybe I'm the only one that felt that way, but I loved my career as an attorney, but there were some days where it was just hard to go to work. Some days were great, some days not so great. But that's life, isn't it? Just like marriage, success and excellence at your work will likely require years and years of dedication and persistent effort. Focus on the career at hand and resist the temptation of wandering eyes. In fact, I am so bold as to say it doesn't matter so much what job you choose. I promise you that if you stick with it and pursue excellence in your chosen career, you will indeed enjoy a large measure of success, and you will end up loving your work more than you might have imagined. And I will tell you that after law school, I started my first job, and there were days when I wondered if I was in the right career or not. But I stuck with it, and 37 years later, I was amazed at how quickly the time had flown by, and it was a rewarding career for Elder Gubler. It was the right one. Fortunately, I chose, and it was just a great experience, mainly because I stuck with it until I became very good at what I did. Okay, another cartoon here. Here's the financial advisor talking to the couple who are ready for retirement. He says, I've crunched the numbers in your retirement account. It's time to figure out who will be wearing the mask and who will be driving the getaway car. So apparently these people hadn't prepared for retirement. But again, getting a quality education and a good career is more than just feathering your nest or just developing a large retirement account. What is the purpose of self-reliance? Elder Hell says, The purpose of both temporal and spiritual self-reliance is to get ourselves to higher ground so that we can lift others in need. An example of this happened to me just a few weeks ago. I was substitute teaching seminary. We were talking about Peter and Christ, and it was just prior to Christ's trial and his crucifixion. And he told Peter, when you are converted, you'll help the fellow saints, right? And so as part of that lesson, I had two of the young men, sit down facing each other cross-legged. And I said, now, I want one of you to pull the other one up. And they struggled and tried to do that, and they couldn't pull the other one up. And then I invited one of the two to stand up, and I said, now, grab hold of his hand and see if you can pick him up. And it was easily done. So that's what Elder Hell says we need to do. We need to be self-reliant so that we can get to higher ground and lift others in need. And I think that's what a good education and a quality career will do for us. A war story here. When I was a new bishop years ago, we had a brother named Lomond in our ward, and he was habitually underemployed or unemployed. He had married a sweet sister who had 2 or 3 kids of her own. They then had 2 or 3 together, and he was constantly seeking financial assistance from the church. The bishop just prior to me had arranged for him to go back and do a bookkeeping course, a 9-month bookkeeping course. And when I became bishop, Lomond was still in that course. So the last 2 or 3 months we used welfare funds to assist him, faster offering funds to assist pay his tuition. He finished that course, immediately got a job working for the city of Visalia in their bookkeeping department, became very successful at it. In fact, became my ward finance clerk since he had all these new skills, right? And he went on to then get another governmental job in that area. So all of a sudden he was able to spend more time with his family. He was able to be financially independent and then bless the lives of other saints. Now, when we've achieved all these things, let me caution that we don't become prideful or boastful. Here's a quote from President Brigham Young that I've always liked. He says, "The worst fear that I have about this people is that they will get rich in this country." He's talking about the saints that living in poverty in the Midwest and Utah. He says, "I'm concerned that the saints will get rich in this country, forget God and His people, wax fat, and kick themselves out of the church and go to hell. This people will stand mobbing, robbing, poverty, and all manner of persecution, and be true. But my greater fear for them is that they cannot stand wealth, and yet they have to be tried with riches, for they will become the richest people on this earth." Pretty interesting statement, isn't it? And if you look around, the saints, after almost 200 years, are becoming quite, from what I can see, socially and economically, very well-to-do. I see that here in New Zealand, I see that in the States, I see that in many parts of the world. So when you do achieve a measure of success, we need to remember that we need to stay humble and do that so that we can lift others. Okay, here's what I promised about Samoa here. I don't know if you've heard this story or not, but President David O. McKay had this to say. During a cultural ceremony, President McKay said to the Latter-day Saint high chiefs and priesthood leaders present, "Be sure to honor your native titles, but do not put them before the holy priesthood of God." He said, "Some of our saints have been reluctant to give away their high titles in order to accept responsibilities within the church. Our dear friend, Brother Vatisimanu, if I said that right, was an exception. At one time, he was offered the highest title in Samoa that can be bestowed upon a person, if he would leave the Mormon church. His answer was, 'I would rather be a deacon in the Mormon church than the king of Samoa.'" I thought that was pretty cool. I got that from the Church History Museum just next door. So I was so impressed with that, I said I'm going to include that in my comments today. A lot of faith there, but remember to stay humble. We're going to wrap this up here in a few minutes. President Monson, our responsibility is to rise from mediocrity to competence, from failure to achievement. Our task is to become our best selves. One of God's greatest gifts to us is the joy of trying again, for no failure ever need be final. Okay? Maybe you've tried to get a good education before. It's not too late to try again. Maybe you're in a career that is not satisfying. Well, work on it. No failure ever need be final. Keep trying and you'll do well. Let me end by asking you this question. what gets you up in the morning? Okay, this question arose in sacrament meeting in the Takapuna Second Ward, Young Single Adult Ward. Sister Gubler and I have been assigned to work with the young people there. It's been very rewarding. They're just top quality young people. And a sister by the name of Stacy spoke in sacrament meeting, and she said that at her uni class, or university class, one of her lecturers had asked them one morning, what gets you up in the morning? And her first thought was, oh, the alarm clock. And then she said, well, and then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and she said, what gets me up is that if I don't get up, I will miss class. And if I miss class, then I won't hear the lecture. And if I don't hear the lecture, then I won't pass the test, and then I won't pass the class, and then I won't graduate. So what got her up in the morning was to get to class, to get that education. And that's how it should be with us, brothers and sisters. What gets you up in the morning? Hopefully it's a desire to obtain intelligence, to get a better education, to work on making that career a priority so that you can not only be self-reliant, take care of your families, but so that you can bless the lives of others. So let me just conclude then with that. These are our 3 points again. Thank you very much for coming. I just want to testify that in my life, I have tried to emphasize the importance of obtaining a good education and a good career for myself and for the family. And I can testify that as you pursue that quality education and excellence in your chosen career, your life will be blessed and the lives of your loved ones as well. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Any questions here? I'll be glad to answer anything I can. Okay. Well, I'll let you go 2 or 3 minutes early. I hope you enjoy the rest of Education Week. Lots of good classes. And because you're here, I know that you are making education a priority. So I compliment all of you. Thank you for coming.